Hello everyone and welcome back to Whiskey Wednesday. I've just taken a chunk out of my thumb while I was trying to make dinner, so I'm hoping that this review will make me feel a little bit better about it. We're going back to SMWS today, and this is something which I never thought I would actually buy, because as a distillery, it isn't a distillery whose regular bottles have ever really wowed me, and a lot of the independent stuff that I've tried from them has never really done a lot for me either. Apart from one, and perhaps two now. This is Baptised in Oloroso. This is distillery 35, and it is release 350. One of 218 bottles, ex-bourbon hogshead with a first fill ex-Oloroso finish at 60.5% ABV. And this wonderful little thing is from the Glen Moray distillery. But before we talk about that, SMWS are having quite the year when it comes to sherry. And with my purchase came this little book. Well, book, it's a magazine, wonderfully printed with all of their little embossed logos and things on it. This is Scotch and Sherry, a flavour odyssey. This has taught me more about sherry than most articles about sherry have. And it has a combination of huge in-depth detail whilst also keeping things quite easy to understand, which I've always thought was a bit of an issue with sherry, especially when it came to different sherry varieties, different types of sherry, and all this kind of thing. But even some of like the pictures in this thing of like historically accurate things, quite incredible. So by all means, if you purchase a sherried malt from them, this should come with it, which is quite nice. It's 10 quid on its own. And in all honesty, I don't buy a lot of whiskey magazines. I work for a company that publishes one every quarter, so we get to read that for free. But I've not really done that much diving into whiskey magazines myself, because so many things, like every article is online now, isn't it? So there's not a lot that is required, but just so some people can see it, well, that's what I mean when we talk about the sherry triangle, all the areas of Spain there on the southern coast where you can source sherry from. But yeah, this is super intense, really in depth. If you already know quite a lot about sherry, you don't need to read it. I thought I knew a lot, and now I know even more. But let's crack on with this thing. Look at the colour on that. I describe a lot of whiskey as burnt orange, but this is the most burnt orange, brown sugar, not brown sugar, like brown butter, kind of nutty vibe to it. American oak with first fill ex-Oloroso finish. Don't know how long that finish was for. And there are a few tasting notes on there. I've had this bottle for a bit, taken a tiny chunk out of it. And I apologise to the amount of fruit flies that are in the room today. Is that camera straight? Yeah. They are bouncing about all over the place. But let's sniff, taste, and see what's going on with Baptised in Oloroso. Ooh. The ABV is pretty punchy on the nose, I can't deny that. Just cover my glass up there with that little card. Up front you had this really sticky toffee, date, raisin thing. Not too unfamiliar. There's a hefty pinch of cinnamon and even some more savoury spices, things like turmeric and cumin. The most amazing note, and I know this is on the front of the bottle, so power of persuasion is a thing, but it does have this very intense, like honey glazed ham note to it. Honestly, quite remarkable, the intensity of like the meatier notes coming off this. Also not that sulphury either, like you get a little bit of like tang in your nostril, but that's purely from the ABV. I do have some water here as well, so we're going to review it without and with water, just to give you a contrast, because, you know, 60.5% Glen Moray, I feel there's a lot of room in there to experiment a bit. But yeah, classic sherry stuff, but with loads of rich, meaty honey notes too. That's really weird. The initial taste is like strawberry lemonade. Like it has this kind of fizzy, bright not very tart, but slightly tart feel to it. As you do kind of move it around, the savoury thing really kicks in a fair bit more. You wouldn't think this had ever been sat in American oak. That Oloroso thing is big and broad and spicy. It actually also doesn't state if the hogshead was European oak. It probably isn't. It doesn't have any like over the top unusual spiciness to it that European oak can give you. But those ham, cumin, turmeric notes, they're like low and bassy and kind of pulsating. They really kind of ride all around the sides of your tongue. That strawberry note's really interesting because when I've drank this before, I've never had that. So that is quite a surprise. And the ham thing, it is like Iberico ham, that kind of beautiful, air-cured, waxy, fatty, meaty style of ham. And the toffee notes are really starting to sing now as well. The date thing is popping a lot more. The first couple of sips, you do get that building of spice in the 60.5%. And I don't know if it's just catharsis from cutting my thumb that I need that intensity right now, but it doesn't appear to be that over the top. Which is odd, because I thought this thing would actually get even more intense. Even through the green bottle, you can see how dark the liquid is. Just going to cover that glass up again, because that fly's doing the rounds. And yeah, this is just like pretty cool. The only 3 whiskies I've currently ever bought from SMWS were a Glenlossie, a Glengarry, and now a Glen Moray. And I know Glengarry quite well, or relatively well. Glenlossie, I've only owned... Was it a Glenlossie? Yeah, it was a Glenlossie. I've only owned the old 10-year-old of that. I've never personally owned a bottle of Glen Moray, not an official one. So this is my first one. There is nothing wrong with what Glen Moray do. They make really good whiskey for great price points. And if you are at the distillery, excuse me, I've only ever heard wonderful things about the single casks they have there. Cask strength releases of like peated red wine casks, like cask strength beer maturations, and very fun stuff for like below 60, 65 pounds. That's quite impressive in modern day single cask strength whiskey. But this is something which I'm actually looking forward to just seeing what happens to it as we get on, because I forgot to say too, it's also 16 years old. That was like a big factor I left out. Apologies for that. So a 16-year-old, 60.5% Glen Moray with a sherry finish on it. And then now that I'm talking to you and kind of letting the whiskey kind of move around my palate, maybe it was a European oak hogshead, because there is this really interesting cigar smoke note, which is all the way like back here. It's kind of like behind my jaw. And it feels very just rolling and intense and, you know, heavy and rich. But let's do a quick, well, there should be some water left in here, a quick test with the water. Not a lot, we don't need a lot. Little swizzle, and then just a quick smell and taste again to see what happens. So the water has made it significantly sweeter on the nose. There is just more of that kind of cake batter, cake mix. Raw honey, sticky toffee sauce, toffee puddings, like chewy toffee, like those things you get in Quality Street, the little 1p chew things. Becomes even sweeter. The cumin, the turmeric stuff, it's not really there anymore if you were to add water. And then to taste, okay, weirdly enough, it calms everything right down until you swallow it. And then you get this like serpentine like spice that shoots back up the middle of your tongue. which again is making me think it probably is a European oak sherry cask. It just has that kind of weird, funky, dirty thing that they're famous for. An incredible thing to smell though. And with water, it's just like a perfect dessert alternative. I can imagine putting this in like a dessert sauce and it just amplifying everything up. That's a really nice bottle of whiskey. That cost me just under £100 for a 16-year-old cask strength. And I think it's really nice. It does a lot of things that I wanted it to do. There are some unexpected notes in there that are a little bit more savoury, but I quite enjoy those. Yeah, I think it's like a perfectly fine style. I'm going to give that like a 7.5 out of 10. Not the best score in terms of the other SMWS bottles I've reviewed. I think I gave the Glenlossie and the Glengarry got like a 9 or a 9.5, and I'm pretty sure the Glenlossie got an 8 or an 8.5. I've already nearly finished both of those bottles. This is really good, and it's going to see me through most of the year. I say that, there's only like 5 months of the year left at this point. But yeah, like a nice 7.5. If you're looking for something which is cask strength and a bit intense and you are an SMWS member, if you're in the bars, I'd probably recommend grabbing a glass of this because it is particularly tasty. And I'm about to go and browse their website and see what other unusual things they've got on there, because the July outrun, I think, well, it's a couple of days in, but I need to check it and see what's going on. But thank you all very much for watching. This is Baptised in Oloroso, and I will see you all next week.